Okay, well, we know everybody is enjoying building some new relationships and networking and visiting, but you'll have a couple more breaks throughout the day. And to keep us on time, we're going to go ahead and get started with our next panel with a very hot topic of workforce development. I know the labor force and all that entails can be a challenge for small to large businesses. But people are what make things happen. They're what makes the products, provides the service, and makes businesses go round. So to talk a little bit about what the current issues are in workforce, we've got a great panel here, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Phedra Redifer, who is the Executive Director with Workforce Solutions of North Central Texas. Thank you for moderating for us today.
Thank you so much, July, and welcome everybody. It's great to see everyone here today, and as you mentioned, workforce development is such a key in all things that we do to create economic prosperity for our entire state of Texas. I am really excited to be here. We are joined by several of our staff members from our Workforce Development Board, so I do encourage you that throughout the course of the day and after the event today, please visit with them. They are the talent experts for North Central Texas, and I'm excited that they're here. Just a really quick overview, we are one of 28 workforce development boards in the state of Texas. We are the North Central Texas Workforce Board. We are one of the 7 largest. Pretty excited about that number. And we are what we refer to affectionately as the donut around Dallas and Tarrant counties. I say the donut with sprinkles because we do have a lot of uniqueness with regards to the region that we represent. As you can imagine, specifically speaking about the region, we do have a very diverse region. We are rural, urban, and suburban, and all points in between, which makes our job challenging, but yet exciting as well. And as I mentioned earlier, we have an expert team in workforce development. Again, a lot of them are here with us today. A lot of them are still back at the office or out in the field, and they are here to serve the business community in order for us to deliver on our mission, which of course is to advance business-driven solutions to promote economic growth, opportunity, and a skilled workforce. So now that you all had your entree discussion with regards to financing and funding, it's now time to really get down to business as to how do you develop the skilled workforce that you need. It is ever so important to us that we really make sure that in our role with regards to the support of workforce development in our region, that there is an underscore of the linkage with workforce, education, and industry. Our job is really to make sure that we can retain small businesses in our rural communities, as well as to also attract further industry and manufacturing into our rural communities as well. So one thing I'd like to share too is that we do have 11 workforce centers in our entire region, and we have one right here in Stephenville. Really important, this is a community asset. We have many staff who are under this roof, and we provide many workforce programs and services related to workforce development, and we also manage workforce adjacent issues of access to affordable childcare, making sure that we can get our job seekers to skilled training opportunities who may need some reimbursement for gas. And we also, of course, support training and development for them as well. So just want to make sure that you're aware that we actually have a workforce center here in Stephenville. We host job fairs and we connect job seekers to the jobs that you need to have filled. What I'm really excited about today is the timing of everything, and again, I give all the credit to our talented staff, but today we have actually issued a press release, and we're here to share with all of you that we have just introduced a small business solutions suite of business services specifically to address rural communities, as well as making sure that we address the pressure points and pain points that small businesses are going through, all related to workforce development. A couple things I'd like to share is that we, as part of these services, we are able to provide labor market information, which is ever so critical as far as looking at competitive wages, as well as the type of skilled workforce that you're trying to build and attract. Other points of services is that we help you with talent attraction and retention strategies. And of course, we can access specific funds from the Texas Workforce Commission to support you in workforce development. So with that in mind, excuse me, let's just get down to business. I think that's the most important reason why we're here. We have a very intentionally curated panel of partners that I'm so excited to introduce. I'll start first with Jeff Sandford. He's the Executive Director with the Stephenville Economic Development Authority. If you're not best friends with him yet, I would highly recommend it. We're a little bit of trouble here, so we'll have to try to stay focused. Okay. He is flanked by Hilary Stephans. She is Entity Human Resource Officer with Texas Texas Health Resources, followed by Tally Hickey. She is the Director of Human Resources with Fossil Rim Wildlife Center. And of course, our caboose, Dr. George Mollick, the Interim Dean and Associate Professor of Engineering Technology here at the awesome Tarleton State University. So I just want to give a huge shout out to our partners who are joining us. Of course, rural communities are the backbone to the prosperity that America has been able to enjoy. And we want to make sure we do everything that we can do to preserve the economic growth and prosperity of our rural communities. So I'm going to go ahead and get the panel started. And of course, we can take questions as we go, and we'll be here afterwards as well to follow up with any questions that you have. So I'm going to kick it off first with Jeff. Jeff, your organization is deeply connected and invested to business and industry here in Stephenville. What are some of the challenges that you're hearing from businesses related to recruitment and retention, and how are you addressing them?
Well, thank you, Phedra. Howdy. One thing that Phedra didn't mention before I answer your question, I always like to divert a question by just, to give me a chance to think. If you don't know what Phaedra's doing over in her neck of the woods, for all of us, it's also to create innovation in the areas of service. And every time we have had a discussion with her and her team, it has been about how can we make this happen, rather than the old rote way of doing things. And I think that leads into what all of us would probably talk about, and that is that the biggest challenge is with those that choose not to change, that to continue to want to do things the way they were done before. We have no problem recruiting anything. We have no problem getting people interested in Stephenville. The problem is, oftentimes and many of you are our existing businesses, and I'm certainly not saying you're a problem. The problem is reaching out and trying to figure out how to help you who have to be competitive in a world like that, with workforce and with other issues you might have, and understanding that with that comes some change, and you have to be innovative. We look at all the different things in this world, from churches to education to school. Well, schools are education, but other ways. The ones that change with the times and innovate with the kinds of people that we have now. And let's face it, anybody have kids 20 to 25 years old, 30 years old? Are they the same? Do they live the same life you did? Yet we still continue to figure out ways in our workforce or in our working environment to do it the same way we did it when we were kids. It doesn't make any sense. So those are some of the challenges. We can get into some solutions in a moment. But I would say that the thing about Stephenville that's so different is we may, and you use the word rural communities in the backbone and all this, we are a rural community, no question. We're a secondary, tertiary community in terms of recruitment. But we have big city ideas and big city innovation, and we're one of the fastest growing towns in the state of Texas. So that creates its own challenges, which we'll get to in a moment. But I'll let you go on with the other group.
Thank you so much. And what I'd really like to underscore what Jeff said is that we operate with a public workforce system that has been around for many, many years. But if we don't find the workarounds and create innovative solutions to the workarounds, we're going to stay static. And as you all know, the state of Texas is undergoing unprecedented growth in terms of population as well as business attraction. We have to do our best to retain the businesses that built the strength of the Texas economy, as well as make sure we can continue to attract additional business here in our state of Texas. I'm really excited because the public workforce system, for all intents and purposes, it was designed to be the backbone to make sure that we can produce a skilled workforce. But as you all know, everything has been shifted. Everything was flipped on a dime. So we need to be at pace and even ahead of that pace as we drive for business solutions to answer the pain points that you have, all related to growing small businesses, retaining small businesses, and of course having that skilled workforce that you need. So the next question, I will actually toss it over to Hilary. Hilary, healthcare has been one of the hardest hit industries over the past few years in terms of staffing. What are some challenges that THR is facing regarding talent acquisition and retention, and how are you overcoming them?
So I think over the last few years, we've developed a huge gap. During the pandemic, we've had a massive amount of specialty areas just say, okay, I'm done, and leave the workforce, retire early, move on to different things. And I think trying to bridge that gap, we are getting the right people coming in, but the hands-on experience I don't think is there. When you've got RNs that have been there for a year, training new RNs that are just coming into the industry, that's really hard. So there's a lot of internal trainings that have been developed. working on trying to do our own type certifications and getting certified to teach some of those things. I think, you know, we utilize a lot of the local universities, specifically in the Arlington area too, because we are based in Arlington. So utilizing those resources and just trying to be creative in making work fun again. You know, they have been a very hard-hit area, so keeping them motivated to come to work has been difficult. You know, but we don't want to assume what they want when they get there, right? So working with them to tell us what ideas they have and what makes it enjoyable to come to work, and then really focusing on the human aspect of retention. I think, you know, managers have to manage a different way to keep people there. You know, they always say caring now is a huge aspect of management. You've got to really deeply care about your employees and they're not just, you know, their work life, but how it intertwines with their personal life too. So kind of taking a different approach and retaining the people, focusing on the people side while developing them internally.
That is wonderful, and I really appreciate that. That's something that we really strive for in our department as well as workforce is we walk our walk and we talk our talk. It is very important that we listen to the needs of our employees. They are our most valuable asset, hands down. And so the investment that we make with them, not just in the professional time frame during the day, but also how can we best support them in their private life for them to make sure that they can have that balance and bring their best selves to the workplace. Thank you for that. Tally, the next question is for you. So we often hear from our employers that attracting talent to a rural business and community can be challenging. With benefits and salary being major factors in the headlines, as well as employment decisions, what is Fossil Rim doing in ways to address these ongoing issues? Yeah, you bet.
Totally was looking at something else.
Okay, so I'm asking the question with regards to employers that are trying to attract talent to rural businesses and communities, and oftentimes, as we're hearing, pay and benefits are the leading contributors as to what's holding people back from accepting positions. And so what ways are you all addressing this when those come into play?
So basically what we do is we take different pay bands and salaries from different organizations that are just like ours, and then we do a median between the both for where we're at, and then we usually try to pay 10% above market value to kind of attract those employees in, and also we come up with a really good benefit package to attract them when it comes to like PTO, CTO, you know, giving them time off when they need it, when they feel like they've worked too much or they want to spend more time with their family. We try to do as much as we can throughout the year for employees too, to attract them. Like, hey, we do employee appreciation events. You know, if we're able to, because we are a nonprofit, sometimes if we're able to give raises throughout the year instead of just one time, we try to give raises throughout the year, and that kind of attracts people to know that they're going to be able to get more than just one raise. We also do a cost of living, especially with the rates going up on everything these days. And then one of the other things that we try to do is we don't give a bonus because we're a nonprofit, but at the end of the year, if Fossil Rim has done well, then we try to give them a little bit of money as a thank you for, thank you for all your hard work throughout the year. And I think the biggest thing to attract people to a rural area is to know that we truly care about our employees and what can we do to keep them and want to stay here.
Thank you very much. Dr. Mollick, this question is for you. Dr. Rupa really kicked us off on such a high note with all the great achievements. She did. It's what she does. Tarleton is here to stay, and it is contributing significantly to the economic development and impact, not just to Stephenville, but Erath County, and for that matter, the North Central Texas Workforce Development Board area. And we could not be more proud of our partnership. and the strength that you all bring. And so this question is really specific to the work that you all are doing and represent here at the university. So Tarleton, as we know, it's a strong education partner for our Workforce Development Board, as well as throughout the region. Industry and education have a need to be more collaborative than ever before. What ways would you suggest that we align the regional economic development plans with regional academic program and research goals to provide a better ecosystem to promote economic prosperity and a skilled workforce? What do you see in this space?
Welcome from higher education. We're here to help you. That's the most scary thing anyone can say to you other than, I'm from the government, I'm here to help you. Welcome to our ivory tower. If you see the faculty levitating across the green, don't talk to them. They may fall. No, I think that there are a lot of things, and I think Texas is changing how it views the role of higher education. And so I forgive me if my responses are more in the macro and less in the micro. I have taught in engineering technology for 25 years. I have been really on the ground floor of working with small businesses. We do senior projects for 20 some odd years where we go out and try to help small businesses, small manufacturers. And I will say that, as all of you know, we're just learning it here in higher ed, but as all of you know, you don't just have English problems or engineering problems or finance problems. You have problems, and they tend to be multidisciplinary in nature. And I will say that I think we have leadership here now in Tarleton that thankfully is now understanding that universities are a massive tool for helping small businesses and frankly large businesses to be more competitive. Because it is one thing to get the business up and get it going and getting products out the door, that's one thing. But then now you have to start competing, and now it becomes how do you do it better, faster, cheaper. And those problems, while become very, very specific, are normally very, very complicated. And it takes a lot of different skill sets to make that happen. So I think, to your question, because academicians always hate to answer the question, to your point, I think collaboration is really the name of the game, and communication is the name of the game. And I would say that our friends in Austin, who are, I'm sure, from the government, are here to help us. I think they are. I think there is some intentionality that needs to be placed in terms of what the role of higher ed is. And I think economic development is the context to where all of our actions take place within. And I think right now, you know, I've grown up in the world of higher ed where it's teaching, research, and service, and that's all you do. And I think we need to have a fourth leg to the stool of teaching, research, service, and economic development. And I think faculty's roles should be judged on what you're doing to support those entities. Once you do that, then the coordination between the different partners becomes very easy because you have now motivated the talent to get on board and start doing something. And I think it's a very, very powerful thing. So that would be my response.
Yeah, I agree. How many of you guys have ADD or think you do? Yeah. How many of your kids you think have it? All right, so, you know, think about that. We used to have the old adage of, you know, if you went to college, like a four-year university, you were white collar, you were doing white collar jobs, and if you didn't have that interest, you'd go to blue collar, you know, manufacturing type jobs and all that. That's not really the case. I mean, it is to some extent, and I think it's a good overview of things, but the reality is that a lot of it has to do with repetitiveness or the way the kids act and react to things. And as they are coming up into the workforce, we have to be alert to that we have kind of a different feel than it used to be. Texas is the second youngest state in the union. Anybody know what the first one is, by the way, as an aside? Youngest state in the nation? It is Utah. Anyway, that was just an aside. You can write that down in case you don't remember anything else. But we're the second youngest state, which if you think about it, that means that we have a younger group of people going into the workforce at whatever level. Real quick show of hands so I can get an idea. How many of you are in just small business, retail, restaurant, things that are that nature? Hands. How many of you, okay, got a few. How many are manufacturing industry type things? What are the rest of you? Are you unemployed? You're looking for the jobs? Is that what we're saying? I didn't know that was a part of the workforce. We need to change our answers. So the reality is, if you think about it, the smallest of businesses and the largest of businesses typically are actually aligned in the same way, because those are jobs that if the worker misses, it is harder to replace you. If all you're doing is putting bottle caps on a bottle all day and you're not there, they don't move somebody over from the labeling machine to come do it, right? So you are needed, even though there's 800 other workers in the plant. Same with the small business. If there's two of you selling a dress or whatever, and one of you misses, it changes the whole aspect of the day there. So the ones that do the best are those that have lots and lots of employees. It's sandwich shops, it's corporate retail, those kinds of things, because it's a lot easier to say, hey, Hilary, can you come replace me for a couple of hours? I've got to go whatever. And so that's just the nature of things. We have to be alert to that. So how do we set up our workforce in such a way that we do that? And it goes with education too. How many, in all of your businesses, how many teachers, not just at the college level, but how many teachers have been in your workplace? Not as a customer. A few. So how many parents of your workers, other than to scream at the kid? The reality is, guys, those are the ones that have the most influence on those workers. And yet what we do is we rely on people that have only the smallest amount to tell them what and when to be somewhere. So if we're not getting the parents into the workforce at some point, if we're not getting the educators into the workforce at some point, we are not accomplishing what we need today to have the most influence and tell those kids how good it is. I mean, if you think about from a manufacturing standpoint, a lot of people my age or older, and I'm 29, I'm sure I'm like a lot of y'all. A lot of people in our age group, two things. One, we wanted our kids to have a better life than us, right? So that's our fault. So we got them lazy and entitled. Secondly, we all thought of manufacturing as walking out of a coal mine in West Virginia with soot all over us, or walking out of a textile mill with cotton coming out of our hair or whatever. I mean, it's just not that way anymore. If you've ever stepped foot in these places, you know that you can eat off the floor in most of these plants. Teachers don't know that. I'm not putting down teachers. I'm married to one, but they haven't been in there to see that. So we have to think about how that looks in terms of the education component, and then you take that into, as Dr. Mollick said, you know, into the higher ed as well. How do we continue that process from early ages all the way up through the higher education piece and get those people into your places to see what you need?
Thank you both. And I would actually like to address that from a workforce solutions perspective, and the great work that our team is doing behind the scenes and out in the field is that we actually have what is called a teacher externship program. So what we do is we work with the independent school districts, and we offer an opportunity for teachers to actually be placed into an employer's location for a week during the summer to better understand what is the skill set that they need to go back and teach through their curriculum to the students so that they're actually prepared and have their eyes wide open when they want to have that job, right? What are the skills necessary? What do the teachers need to better understand from the employer perspective that they can develop these lesson plans and actually teach to the students of what it is that they can expect? And so we are working really hard to close that gap. We actually put 25 teachers, I believe, through the teacher externship program last year. We've now increased that number to just over 50 teachers. And the way that we're going to actually even leverage this opportunity even more is that now we want to be able to encourage the employers, now you need to go spend a week in the classroom. We need to bridge that gap to Jeff's point exactly, is that you can teach, and we have amazing teachers in our education system, but some have not actually been in that line of work. So how do you teach to it? And the students nowadays, they need to better understand and experience what is that going to be like. They can want that job, but it's a totally different story when they actually get into that place of employment. So if we can bridge that gap a little bit better, that's how we're working in making sure that teachers are equipped with the real life skill set and considerations that they need to be teaching the students. And again, to also put the employers into the school districts to better understand the challenges that teachers are having to teach in the classroom. They might not have equipment. We obviously have some behavioral challenges. I think that's normal. But what then investment should the employers put back into the school districts? Because it's everybody's challenge. We all have to be all in on this to figure it out, to set that future skilled workforce in motion. The other thing that I would like to say is that our team, and again, I give total credit to our team, is that they are amazing conveners of partners. You see that demonstrated just in the few people who are part of our panel today. Everything that we do is we are convening partners to have those discussions regarding how do we support the tri-agency report and the goals that are in that report, that are making sure that we're all talking about collective challenges and trying to resolve these challenges together as a team. Because it can't just be one person's in trying to solve it all, it's all of our responsibility. And I've never been in a situation since I've been with Workforce, not that long ago, where we have these robust discussions every single day with intentionality, and we see the universities, we see the community colleges coming to the table to have the discussions and listen to the employers of what are your challenges. We have a solution for that, and we are at the table helping drive those conversations, because that's where it has to start. We can't keep doing everything in isolation of one another. We have to have those real conversations, but with action plans and convening partners. It underscores, again, as I shared earlier, industry, education, and workforce, totally linked at all points in time in all that we're trying to do to make sure that we have that skilled workforce. Yes, absolutely.
I would also add, when you are a small department or trying to figure out how to be creative, utilizing those resources that are out there. If you're near a school, you don't necessarily have to go through all the chains. Call the counselor at that school. They have career days. Volunteer for those career days. That's really important to get in front of the students. Volunteer to be on local boards. When you're part of those organizations or part of those boards, you make connections that you don't realize that are out there in a small community. I'm not afraid to call the chamber and say, this is what I have. How can we work together to fix this? So, having the relationships with the local community, just nonprofit organizations that have those resources. There are so many in this area that we don't realize how much we have out there. So getting one or two people that you're comfortable calling and say, where do I go for this? The chamber, I again, go back to that. It's always my first go-to of where do I need to go to start here? Knowing that you've got to get involved with the schools here, not even just high school, but junior high. So if you're in an industry or manufacturing, getting involved in the robotics programs that are starting in those classrooms, they need mentors, and in that, you sell your business and your industry to them, and as they grow, they make that personal connection. Manufacturing is hard to sell, but you can, when you've had those conversations and you show them that it is fun and it is enjoyable. But it does take volunteering, it does take time, and I think there's lots of fun opportunities to make those connections. You just have to reach out.
Great. And Hilary, this question is for you. So recruiting skilled talent, as you know, is not easy. So what is THR doing from a training perspective to promote retention among your current staff, and how does it factor in as a recruitment strategy altogether?
So going back to the internal training, coming up with ways to bridge the gap in the talent that we do have. So a lot of our efforts on personal development, we've got the education reimbursement, those common things that you see in a lot of industries, but going a step further with the hands-on training and reassurance and development internally that helps. I know over the last few years you've seen a trend in online learning. For a while it went to 100% online learning, but getting back into the face-to-face learning really makes a difference, one in morale, engagement, but the actual learning of doing things. It's very hard to learn how to be a part of a surgery when you're doing it on a video. So, being in person and part of those procedures and just patient experiences helps, I think, with our development.
Thank you. Tally, this question is for you, and we also know that the service industry was hit pretty hard, and that goes for tourism, hospitality positions, and experiences out in the recreation field. So talk to us a little bit more about how you've worked to strengthen your workforce out at the Fossil Rim Wildlife Center.
I think the biggest thing is communication with your employees. Communicating what's going on with your organization and where you are moving forward. Making sure that your employees know that you appreciate them and that they're not underappreciated by all the hard work that they do. I think just continually to appreciate everything that they do, where you're going, where they're going in their position, what can you do to help them. There was another part of that question that I totally...
It was about your workforce, just making sure that they are appreciated, obviously, and
So,
strategies that you have.
community too. So basically, a lot of the times when you're short-staffed, communicating with your employees, making sure that the work is evenly spread out within that department, so then one person doesn't feel overworked and the other person not. I think community is a good thing, because one of the things that we do within our community is when we are short-staffed, we go out to the community, we give them flyers. A lot of the small businesses that are in the area that we're in Glen Rose work together with Fossil Rim, because a lot of people come from out of town to go within that area to visit Fossil Rim, so it brings business into the community and to the restaurants and to the boutiques and stuff like that. So working with each of the different small businesses there really helps, because they allow us to put up flyers when we're looking for positions at Fossil Rim. If they need something from us, I think that helps too. And a lot of the times when you are short-staffed, if you communicate with your employees what's going on and letting them know, hey, we are looking for these positions to be filled. We are going out, we have them posted, you know, we're doing job fairs. I think allowing them to know that you're not just sitting there not doing anything and you're just giving them more work to do, I think that makes them feel more appreciated. So they know that you're doing something, that you're not just sitting there letting them do all the work. I think the biggest thing is communication with your employees. If you communicate with your employees on the struggles of finding more people, but as long as they know that you are searching for more staff and that you're working hard to get that staff, I think that they are more likely to understand that there is a little bit more work on their shoulders and on their co-workers' shoulders. And then managers and directors getting in there to help, not just giving the orders, but doing the work alongside with them, I think helps anybody in any job feel appreciated when you see that your boss is working next to you. So I think just communication and showing your staff in times of struggle when it comes to not having the staffing that you need really helps an employee to respect you more and respect the organization more.
Thank you, Tally. We have 2 questions left in the time that we have. We knew that this quick session was going to go a little bit too fast for us, but this question is directed to Jeff, and then I'll finish up with Dr. Mollick. So Jeff, when you and your team are working with prospective and existing employers, are there major workforce development themes around their decisions to either locate or expand here in Stephenville?
Well, we are God's country. It's not hard to get people to want to be here. But they do have questions about their employee count and workforce and so forth. You know, Texas is the fastest growing labor force in the union, but it's population-wise, 17% by 2030 will grow, but that's labor force. The participation rate's only anticipated to be 13%. So if you think about it, there's going to be some gaps in there. How do we control those gaps? How do we do it? Well, first of all, if you can go to a certain restaurant and makes 15, 16, 17 bucks an hour in an air-conditioned place and work on your hours and so forth, why would you go into an unair-conditioned warehouse and for the same amount of money or less and doing the same repetitive thing. Remember when I asked earlier about the ADD piece? Think about that in terms of what those jobs are. Sometimes we have great people, but we have them in the wrong spot. Sometimes we also have the mentality of, in fact, I was in Georgia just last week visiting a plant that we're moving here to Stephenville. And in doing so, I went out on the floor and they had this great line leader doing tremendous work. They had moved that person up to a leadership position. Excuse me, he was a line worker, moved him up to a line leader. They were miserable and could not handle the leadership part, did not want the leadership part. So they chose to go back to the line piece, and they said, I can't believe you're doing that and taking a pay cut. So I asked them simply, why are they taking a pay cut? If they're the best at what they do, then pay them for it. We've got to get out of the mentality of the old days. We assign something for people at a certain thing because we think that's what they're worth. But then whenever they're great, we move them out of that spot and move them into something else, and that may not be the right seat on the bus. So we have to pay on the merit of the person sometimes and not so much on the job that's there. That's the difference. And so when we talk to people about coming into Stephenville, we talk to them about just that. Get the best people in there and then figure out where they belong. Instead, what do? I need a forklift driver. I need a this, I need a that. And some things are true. We need certifications in those different areas. I get that. But sometimes, too, that we find that these people have more talent or less talent, for that matter, in certain areas, and we need to put them in the right spot. And then we need to, as Tally was saying, and she's very accurate about this, we need to love on them. We need to make sure that we understand who they are and what they are, not just treat them as an employee only. This is a changing world, guys. We talked about it earlier. They need the love. They need our little, they need to be handheld sometimes. And it's a different world than we grew up in. But we got to understand and know our people. The other thing is, how many of you have multiple children? Last thing, and I'll move on. Multiple children? Are they all exactly the same? Well, if your own dadgum children aren't the same, why do you expect them to be that way? Why do we expect them to be that way in our workforce, right? But we do, and we treat them the same way. Our own children, we don't even do it. As I said, or as I watched something last night on a deal with one of my employers, one of my people we're recruiting, they said, you know what, I'm a different dad to every one of my children. And it's the same thing at the workforce. We got to be a little bit of a different boss. Same rules, but you treat it and you approach it a little bit differently. So that's how we do it.
Appreciate that. Dr. Mollick, we'll end with you. So where do you see Tarleton as a leader in economic growth as well as workforce development for Stephenville and Erath County? What role does Tarleton play?
I'm sure James Hurley's actually tuned into this right now and is watching this, and so I'd like to say to my wife, I'll be home early tonight. I think I've seen Tarleton in my 25 years here go from being we're a really good regional teaching institution to we are much more. And I think our current administration gets the whole notion, and I'm sure being prodded by the state, that we are supposed to be much more. Like I said before by other statement, that problems aren't just one specific skill set to solve. You tend to have a group of folks to actually solve a lot of problems that you have, particularly in manufacturing, but really in any kind of industry. One of the few places you have that kind of cross-functional talent is at a university. Community colleges too, but you have that talent waiting around. And I think Tarleton's, what it can do and what higher education has the potential to do is being a massive, massive resource in a very, very nuanced, scalable response to small, medium, and large businesses to help them be more competitive on a global market. And finance is a big thing, human resources is a big thing, but if your core product doesn't fly, if you're not competitive at what you're in business to do, you're not going to survive. And that your ability to do that has to be how competitive are you and your ability to change. And that change comes from, sort of the diverse, I'm not allowed to say that word, the different mindsets that you can bring on a problem. And I will just say, after about 20 years of watching students go out and actually swing at manufacturing problems, and just having that perspective as being different, that can bring a value to a company. If you actually bring in the adults, it's amazing what they can do. So I would say that's us.
Thank you, and I know Hilary has something that she'd like to add.
I would just like to add, Tarleton plays a huge role from a recruiting perspective by selling the community. You know, it's very hard to get people to come into a rural community when they're in a big city with all the social events and cultural districts and restaurants. But, you know, if you go and you look at all the activities that Tarleton brings into this community that people aren't necessarily aware of, that's where we have the opportunity to really sell all of the activities that are in here. You know, the biggest thing to get somebody here is what does Stephenville or the area have to offer? And utilizing those sources and just trying to think outside of the box. Yes, we have a lot of activities, but not as much as the Metroplex. But here's everything that Tarleton brings in. They've got a huge art plays, and I mean, they're always doing different activities and sporting events now, and that's getting bigger, but playing into the universities that we have has been a key getting people into our area. So I thank them for that.
Thank you. We are out of time, but I do see that we have one question, and then we'll wrap up, and then we will stay afterwards. But before we do, I'd like to say thank you so much for joining us on the panel. Thank you to our team who are at these two tables. We also have a booth in the back, and so please visit our professional workforce development team here to serve you. So question in the back, please.
In relation to workforce development, what kind of splash or what kind of things could we be looking for with AI?
That's a great question. We are working on that currently. I think that there is some hesitation and skepticism with regards to what all that can do in terms of the counter effects or unintended consequences. But I can say that we are looking at our systems, we are looking at AI and the technology available to figure out better how can we get closer to our job seekers, how can we better match what they need to experience or be skilled up in the workplace, and how do we try to bridge those two together so that we can actually utilize AI as an advantage to workforce development throughout our region. Okay, so thank you again, I appreciate it. We'll be up here, and again, you can visit us too during the event and afterwards. Thank you, July.